One moment they were lighting up our screens in hit TV shows and blockbuster films, then, without warning, they disappeared. No headlines, no final interviews, no farewell tours, just silence. From breakout talents to veteran icons, these 20 black actors vanished so suddenly that fans were left stunned and Hollywood felt strangely hollow. What really happened behind closed doors? Were they quietly pushed out? Did they walk away from fame? Or is there a deeper story no one ever dared to tell? This isn't just about fading careers, it's about unanswered questions. Watch until the end, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Gazeon. Their stories deserve the spotlight again. Tahir Moore. Tahir Moore burst onto the digital comedy scene like a jolt of electricity, rising from quick-witted skits on Instagram and TikTok to becoming one of the most recognizable faces in online humor. His specialty was razor-sharp observational comedy, the kind that made people say, "That's exactly my life." Whether he was joking about chaotic family moments, awkward romance, or soul-draining workplace drama, Moore delivered every punchline with infectious energy and flawless timing. By 2019 and 2020, his momentum was undeniable, his views multiplied, media outlets began spotlighting him, and whispers of upcoming roles in indie comedy films spread across the internet. Many believed he was on the edge of a mainstream breakthrough. Then, suddenly, everything stopped. Around late 2021, Tahir's social media fell silent. The last upload, a simple, light-hearted slice-of-life clip, remained pinned at the top of his pages like a frozen snapshot of a career paused mid-stride. No farewell, no explanation, just silence. Fans flooded his comment sections with worry. Is he okay? Where did he go? But no answers ever came. The account stayed active, untouched, as if waiting for a comeback that never arrived. Rumors swirled. Some said Moore chose to step back to escape burnout. Others feared deeper personal struggles. Friends hinted at a need for rest, yet no one offered clarity. His once vibrant voice, animated, witty, unmistakably his, vanished without warning. Colleagues reached out. Fans kept watching old clips, but the replies never came. More than 3 years later, Tahir Moore's disappearance remains one of digital comedy's quietest mysteries. In an age where creators live online, his sudden withdrawal left behind an echo, distant, unanswered, and still haunting for those who once laughed with him. 2. Calvin Lockhart. Calvin Lockhart, born in 1934 in the Bahamas, wasn't just another actor of the 1960s and 70s, he was magnetic. With his chiseled features, velvet voice, and undeniable command of the screen, he stood out in an era filled with giants. His breakout roles in Cotton Comes to Harlem, 1970, and Melinda, 1972, made him one of the most compelling faces of the blaxploitation era. He moved with the same elegance as Sidney Poitier, carried the same cool edge as Bill Cosby in their prime, and later surprised fans with his chilling role as King Willie in Predator, 1990. Lockhart looked destined for a long, celebrated Hollywood run, but instead of fading out, he walked away, intentionally. By the late 1990s, he quietly returned to the Bahamas, turning his back on press tours, premieres, and the relentless churn of fame. There was no scandal, no downfall, no dramatic exit, just a man choosing stillness over spotlight. In Nassau, he lived a life the public never expected, farming, mentoring young people, and supporting community projects. Whereas many peers clung to the remnants of stardom, Lockhart chose the opposite path. He embraced peace, anonymity, and the land that raised him. Hollywood barely noticed his disappearance. He didn't grace magazine covers, didn't chase roles, and made no return appearances before passing away in 2007 due to stroke complications. Yet his quiet retreat speaks volumes. How many artists dream of stepping out of the glare? How many measure success not by visibility, but by freedom? Calvin Lockhart is remembered not just for the roles he played, but for the courage to define success on his own terms. His life remains a powerful reminder that sometimes the boldest move a star can make is to walk away. Richard Timothy Jones rose in the late 1990s as one of the most magnetic and promising black actors of his era. With a warm charm and an emotional honesty that felt effortless, he captured hearts in the beloved coming-of-age classic The Wood 1999. His portrayal of Mike caught between childhood bonds and adult responsibility made him an instant standout, placing him alongside rising stars like Omar Epps and Taye Diggs. Jones didn't just act, he connected. His performance felt familiar, lived in, and deeply human. Off that momentum, Hollywood embraced him. His next major breakthrough came as Bruce Van Exel, Amy's love interest in the hit CBS drama Judging Amy 1999, 2005. Week after week, Jones brought tenderness and maturity to the role, earning praise for his natural chemistry with Amy Brenneman. For many viewers, he became the emotional anchor of the show. By the mid-2000s, fans were certain he was destined to become a leading man. He had the presence, he had the talent, he had the range, and his performance as Gavin, Janet Jackson's conflicted, quietly tormented husband, in Tyler Perry's Why Did I Get Married? 2007 seemed to confirm his trajectory towards superstardom. Then the momentum faded. There was no major controversy, no dramatic exit, no public explanation. Jones never announced retirement, but his appearances in major film and TV productions gradually dwindled. Projects became smaller, roles more scattered. Hollywood insiders whispered about industry politics. Others speculated he had simply chosen a quieter life focused on family and faith. But no answers ever surfaced. Across social media, longtime fans still ask, where is Richard T. Jones now? Today he stands as one of Hollywood's quiet mysteries, a gifted actor who seemed on the brink of long-term stardom, only to slip into the background without a headline or a farewell. His disappearance remains one of the industry's most understated enigmas. 4. Lamont Bentley. Lamont Bentley first captured audiences as Hakeem Campbell on Musha, the quick-witted best friend whose humor and warmth lit up every episode. When the series premiered on UPN in 1996, Brandy may have led the show, but Bentley quickly became one of its most beloved pillars, charming, relatable, and effortlessly funny until the series ended in 2001. His magnetic presence led to appearances on The Parkers and several independent films. But while the world saw laughter, those close to him sensed something heavier. Bentley felt boxed in, frustrated by Hollywood's habit of offering him the same kinds of roles. The industry loved his comedic timing, yet he longed for more: dramatic depth, creative freedom, and the chance to explore passions like music. By 2004, he had begun quietly stepping back. He declined events, avoided interviews, and reflected deeply on whether acting still fulfilled him. Friends say he was preparing for a shift, maybe a reinvention, maybe a retreat from the spotlight altogether. But fate cut short the decision he was inching toward. On January 19, 2005, while driving late at night in Ventura County, California, Bentley lost control of his vehicle. It veered off the road and struck a tree. He died at just 31, a sudden, heartbreaking end that stunned fans and colleagues alike. After his passing, many expressed sorrow that he never had the chance to write his next chapter, the one he quietly craved. His death didn't just end a career, it ended a personal evolution that had barely begun. Lamont Bentley didn't choose to disappear. Life intervened before he could step forward. His story is a reminder of how fame can elevate a person, yet still leave their truest journey unfinished. In the 1920s and 30s, Lorenzo Tucker reigned as one of early black cinema's brightest icons, a leading man so striking and magnetic that audiences crowned him the Black Valentino. In race films such as The Duke is Tops and Birthright, Tucker brought elegance, romance, and emotional depth to roles rarely offered to black actors in segregated America. At a time when Hollywood confined black performers to caricatures, Tucker broke the mold with silent-era charisma and early talkie sophistication, carving out a space that was boldly ahead of its time. Yet by the late 1940s, his brilliant glow mysteriously dimmed. Without warning, Tucker slipped out of the spotlight. There were no farewell tours, no press announcements, no dramatic career shift to stage or radio. One day he was a trailblazing screen idol. The next he was gone. Many black performers of his era faced crushing racial limitations, but Tucker's disappearance stands apart because it wasn't caused by scandal or tragedy. He simply walked away. For decades, he became little more than footnotes and yellowed newspaper clippings, his once glamorous legacy nearly swallowed by time. What little is known about his later years suggests a man seeking freedom from an industry that restricted him. Some believe he pursued community work. Others think he intentionally detached himself from the creative world altogether. Tucker lived quietly until 1986, leaving behind as many questions as memories. Lorenzo Tucker's story disrupts our conventional ideas of success. His silence wasn't failure, it was a refusal to remain confined by a system that undervalued him. He didn't fade, he stepped away on his own terms. And in doing so, he left behind an echo that still reverberates through film history. 6. Misty Upham. Misty Upham was one of those rare performers whose talent felt almost prophetic, the kind of actress whose presence lingered long after she left the screen. Born in Auburn, Washington, with both Native American and black heritage, she carried a depth of identity that shaped her artistry in unforgettable ways. Her brief but powerful turn as Minnie in Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained 2012 revealed a quiet intensity that critics immediately noticed. And in August, Osage County 2013, acting alongside giants like Meryl Streep and Susan Sarandon, Upham delivered a grounded, emotionally resonant performance as Jana, proving she belonged among Hollywood's finest. Her career was just beginning to stretch its wings, but off-screen, Upham faced growing battles. She struggled with bipolar disorder, and those close to her saw the increasing weight of that fight throughout 2014. Tense encounters with local law enforcement raised further concerns. On October 5, 2014, everything changed. Misty vanished from her family's Auburn home. 10 agonizing days later, her body was found in a ravine near the White River. The coroner ruled the cause of death as blunt force trauma from an accidental fall, a conclusion her family never accepted. They believed the investigation was rushed, mishandled, and overshadowed by systemic neglect toward indigenous women. Public outrage echoed their grief, demanding a deeper look and real accountability. At just 32, Misty Upham's life ended at the very moment her career was taking shape. Rumors circulated about new roles, developing scripts, and a future filled with promise, all silenced far too soon. Her story has since been included in discussions about missing and murdered indigenous women, but true closure remains elusive. Misty Upham didn't fade from Hollywood. She was stolen before her brilliance could fully shine. Her legacy stands as a haunting reminder of talent lost, justice unanswered, and voices still fighting to be heard. Merlin Santana rose in the late 1990s as one of the most exciting young black actors of his generation, a talent whose charm and presence made every scene brighter. He first appeared on The Cosby Show as the confident and memorable Stanley, but it was his role as Romeo Santana on The Steve Harvey Show 1996-1999 that transformed him into a household name. As Romeo, Santana embodied the smooth-talking, stylish teen heartthrob with an authenticity that resonated across African-American homes. His comedic timing was natural, his expressions effortless, and his charisma undeniable. Teen viewers admired him, parents appreciated him, and the industry saw a star evolving before their eyes. Santana's career path hinted at an actor ready to transition from teen sitcom fame into deeper, more mature roles. By the early 2000s, he began choosing projects with intention. He wasn't chasing attention, he was building longevity. Friends and colleagues often spoke of his discipline and vision. He valued privacy, set boundaries, and focused on roles that reflected who he was becoming rather than who he had been. He was growing into a new chapter, but he would never get the chance to step into it fully. On November 9, 2002, tragedy struck. While sitting in a parked car in Los Angeles' Crenshaw district, Santana was shot and killed. He was only 26 years old. The news rippled through Hollywood and devastated the Black entertainment community. Co-stars described the loss as unthinkable, grieving a life taken not by scandal, illness, or misfortune, but by senseless violence. Investigators moved quickly, and within months, those responsible were arrested. By 2004, the case had concluded. Yet justice did nothing to soften the blow. His family mourned a son, his friends mourned a brother, and fans mourned an artist who still had so much left to give. Merlin Santana's story is not one of quiet retreat or gradual disappearance. It is the story of a young man whose rising future was abruptly stolen, a flame extinguished just as it began to burn its brightest. Today, his legacy lives on through reruns, interviews, and the memories of those who knew him. He is remembered for his warmth, his undeniable talent, and the promise of a career that could have shaped a generation. His absence still echoes, a reminder of how fragile potential can be and how profoundly a single life can touch the world. Garen Taylor first stepped into the spotlight in the mid-2000s, quickly becoming one of the standout personalities on BET's Baldwin Hills. As viewers followed the lives of wealthy Black teens in Los Angeles, Taylor's confident stride, polished style, and undeniable poise made her a fan favorite from the show's debut in 2007. With her elegance and natural on-camera charisma, many believed she was destined for a bright future in modeling, acting, or broader entertainment. But after the final seasons of Baldwin Hills, Taylor did something unexpected. She quietly stepped back. Unlike many reality stars who turned their fame into brand deals, acting roles, or public platforms, she chose a different path. She remained active on social media, yet kept a noticeable distance from casting calls, events, and Hollywood circles. There were no scandals, no dramatic exits, just a young woman choosing privacy over performance. Fans often wondered what direction her life had taken. Some assumed she was focusing on her education. Others believed she simply wanted a life outside the camera's glare. Her silence felt intentional, a gentle retreat rather than a disappearance. Then, in early 2021, devastating news broke Garen Taylor had passed away at just 30 years old due to complications from lupus and an autoimmune condition she had quietly battled. The announcement stunned those who remembered her grace, confidence, and bright spirit on Baldwin Hills. Looking back, her subtle withdrawal from fame reflects a far more intricate story, one of private struggles, quiet strength, and personal boundaries. Garen Taylor's journey reminds us that success isn't always measured in public visibility. Sometimes the bravest choice is stepping away to protect one's peace. Though she faded from television screens, her impact remains, cherished by fans who saw in her a blend of beauty, dignity, and authenticity. 9. Julius Carry. Julius Carry burst into pop culture history with a roar and a glowing red outfit as Sho'nuff, the self-proclaimed shogun of Harlem, in the 1985 cult classic The Last Dragon. His performance was outrageous, hilarious, theatrical, and utterly iconic. Even decades later, fans still quote his lines and celebrate him as one of cinema's most unforgettable villains. But Carry was far more than the larger-than-life character that made him famous. With a deep voice, imposing stature, and razor-sharp comedic instincts, he became a go-to presence in television throughout the late 80s and 90s. From Pee-wee's Playhouse to a long list of guest roles, Carry brought intensity and charm to every project he touched. Yet despite his talent, Hollywood often boxed him into narrow spaces, eccentric villains, quirky figures, intimidating adversaries. While he continued working steadily, the industry rarely gave him the same room to shine that The Last Dragon had. As the 2000s approached, his screen appearances grew less frequent. There were no tell-all interviews, no retirement announcements. Carry simply stepped back, choosing privacy over the grind of roles that no longer excited him. Colleagues later recalled his desire for richer, more varied characters, a wish the industry too often denied black actors of his era. In 2008, Julius Carry passed away from pancreatic cancer at just 57. His death sparked heartfelt tributes from fans who never forgot the Shogun of Harlem and from peers who admired his professionalism and spirit. Carry's career stands as both a triumph and a reminder. Even cult legends face the struggle of typecasting and dwindling visibility. Yet his legacy remains fierce, bold, unforgettable, and forever echoing through the halls of pop culture history. 10. Miguel Nunez Jr. Miguel A. Nunez Jr. carved out a unique space in 1990s Hollywood, winning audiences over with his sharp comedic instincts and undeniable charm. Whether starring in Juwanna Mann 2002 as the basketball player who cross-dresses to revive his career, or sharing the screen with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence in Life 1999, Nunez Jr. proved he could deliver both humor and heart with ease. His role on the UPN sitcom Sparks 1996-1998 further solidified his reputation as a charismatic and reliable character actor. For a time, it looked as though Nunez Jr. was on the cusp of even bigger breakthroughs. Insiders spoke highly of his work ethic and warm screen presence, qualities that often mark the transition from supporting player to bankable star. Then, in the mid-2000s, something shifted. His presence in major films and television slowly tapered off. Instead of chasing blockbuster roles, he gravitated toward independent films, web series, and small theatrical projects. The move puzzled some, but those who understood him best saw intention, not decline. Rumors swirled, whispers of financial challenges, personal struggles, or family pressures. Nunez Jr., close-lipped about his private life, never confirmed or denied the speculation. What did emerge from colleagues was a different story. A talented actor weary of Hollywood's typecasting treadmill, searching for work that fed his spirit rather than his fame. Today, Miguel A. Nunez Jr. remains active, though far from the mainstream spotlight. He pops up in indie films, lower-budget productions, and occasionally in the director's chair, reflecting a man who chose creative freedom over celebrity. His is not a tale of scandal or tragedy, but of quiet evolution, a deliberate retreat from Hollywood's glare into spaces where he can tell stories on his own terms. 1. Jason Bernard. Jason Bernard was never the loudest performer in the room, nor the most aggressively promoted, but for 2 decades, he was one of Hollywood's most reliable anchors. Beginning his television career in the 1970s, Bernard quickly earned a reputation for portraying authoritative, grounded figures, principals, doctors, judges, government officials, and men whose decisions shaped the stories around them. His calm command made him instantly credible. Audiences remember him as Stephen Falcon's composed aide at NORAD in War Games 1983, and as the firm yet fair Vice Principal Buchanan on The White Shadow. Throughout the 1980s and early 1990s, he became a familiar face across American television, guest starring on Hill Street Blues, Louisiana, Law, Cagney and Lacey, and countless others. Casting directors knew he could elevate even a brief scene. He was the actor who made every script feel grounded in reality. Yet by the early 90s, the roles began to slow. His last widely noted performance was in the 1994 TV film For the Love of Nancy, where he played the doctor responsible for treating Tracy Gold's character as she battled anorexia, a role that called for emotional weight, compassion, and steadiness, all qualities Bernard delivered naturally. After that, he continued to work, but mainly in small guest appearances and lower-profile projects. His presence hadn't disappeared. Hollywood's attention had simply drifted elsewhere. On October 16, 1996, Jason Bernard died suddenly from a heart attack at 58. The news came quietly, almost too quietly. There were no major retrospectives, no widespread industry tributes, no prime-time memorials. For an actor who had appeared in dozens of iconic shows and films, his passing landed softly, overshadowed by the fast-moving entertainment cycle. Bernard's career is a powerful reflection of how Hollywood often treats character actors, men and women who hold stories together, who give television its realism and texture, yet rarely receive the celebration afforded to stars. His gradual fade from public view wasn't due to scandal or decline, but simply the nature of a profession where contributions can be unforgettable even if the name isn't. Jason Bernard didn't exit in tragedy, controversy, or public spectacle. He slipped away as he had lived on screen, quietly, steadily, and with dignity. His legacy lives on in the fabric of 1980s and 90s television, embedded in scenes viewers remember even when they no longer recall the man who made them work. 1-2. Shawn Nelson. Shawn Nelson burst onto the scene with a force few child actors ever achieve. At just 12 years old, he delivered a performance in the 1994 thriller Fresh that stunned critics and audiences alike. As the young drug runner navigating a brutal world with chilling intelligence, Nelson displayed emotional depth far beyond his years. Reviewers called his work hauntingly real, directors praised his instincts, and many predicted he was destined to become one of cinema's next great talents. Yet, almost as quickly as he rose, Shawn Nelson slipped away. After Fresh, he appeared in The Secret World of Alex Mack and a few TV movies, but none recaptured the electricity of his debut. By the late 1990s, he had quietly disappeared from casting rooms. There were no scandals, no public meltdowns, no dramatic career shifts, just a gradual fading from the industry that once seemed ready to embrace him. Nelson never announced retirement. In truth, his silence became the only explanation. Friends say he simply stepped away, perhaps choosing education or a different calling over the relentless pressure of Hollywood. Whatever path he took, he chose it privately. Today, his legacy rests almost entirely on Fresh, a film still studied, dissected, and celebrated for its raw power. Nelson's performance remains a benchmark for child acting, yet his absence lingers as one of Hollywood's quieter mysteries. His story reflects a recurring pattern: young actors who burn brightly, then leave without warning or closure. Though the details of Shawn Nelson's life after fame remain unknown, the brilliance of his early work lives on, a reminder of how fleeting, fragile, and unpredictable early success can be when the spotlight fades. 1-3. Sheldon Turnipseed. Sheldon Turnipseed won over young audiences as Jamal Jenkins on PBS's Ghostwriter 1992-1995, a groundbreaking series that celebrated literacy, teamwork, and urban intellectualism. Jamal's calm intelligence and curiosity made him the emotional anchor of the show, and Sheldon infused the character with a quiet strength that resonated deeply with children who rarely saw themselves reflected on screen. To many, he wasn't just a TV character, he was a role model. His performance became woven into the nostalgia of an entire generation. But when Ghostwriter ended, Sheldon Turnipseed didn't chase the momentum. Instead, he stepped away. There were no follow-up roles, no stage appearances, no transition into voice acting or teaching. He didn't appear at reunions, fan conventions, or nostalgic retrospectives. He simply disappeared from the public sphere, leaving almost no trail. Industry colleagues tried to reconnect, but doors stayed closed. Speculation filled the silence. Some believed he returned to school or chose an ordinary life outside the pressures of fame. Others suspected he entered an entirely new profession, one far removed from Hollywood's expectations. Without credits, interviews, or public statements, his absence became its own mystery. What makes Turnipseed's story so compelling is its simplicity. He didn't fade because of scandal, burnout, or tragedy. He stepped away because he chose to. In a culture obsessed with "where are they now?" reunions and constant visibility, Sheldon Turnipseed's retreat feels almost revolutionary, a reminder that not every childhood star wants to grow up under the same bright lights. His legacy lives on in Ghost Rider reruns and the memories of fans who still see Jamal as a symbol of representation and quiet brilliance. Some stories end loudly, but his ended gently by letting the spotlight go. 14. Sly Stone. Sly Stone wasn't just a musician, he was a cultural earthquake. As the visionary frontman of Sly and the Family Stone in the late 1960s and 70s, he revolutionized American music with a fusion of funk, soul, rock, and social commentary that felt like nothing the world had heard before. With anthems like Dance to the Music and Everyday People, he preached unity, defied racial boundaries, and electrified stages with a presence so powerful it felt supernatural. But behind the brilliance, his life slowly unraveled. By the early 1980s, substance abuse dragged him into chaos. Performances became unreliable, missed shows, forgotten lyrics, and a growing unpredictability that overshadowed his genius. After 1982, Sly Stone began to slip away from public view entirely. Rumors swirled in the vacuum he left behind. Was he homeless? Living out of a van? Running from fame? Fans whispered, unsure whether he was alive or gone. His sudden appearance at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction in 1993 shocked many who assumed the worst. Yet afterward, he vanished once more. No comeback tour. No clarifying interview, no closure. He moved often, changed his identity, and let the trail grow cold. While other legends spent their later years celebrating their legacy, Sly Stone drifted further into obscurity, a self-imposed exile that transformed him from icon into myth. His silence didn't dim his influence, it amplified his mystery. Sly Stone didn't just leave the spotlight, he blew out the lights behind him, and in a world desperate for explanations, he offered none. His story stands as a haunting reminder even the brightest stars can choose to fade, and sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is disappearing entirely. 15. Lloyd Avery II. Lloyd Avery II made his mark in Hollywood with only a few minutes of screen time, but those minutes were unforgettable. As the silent, cold-eyed gunman who murdered Ricky in Boys in the Hood 1991, Avery delivered a moment so chilling, so brutally authentic, it became one of the most iconic scenes in black cinema. Critics recognized the raw power he brought to the role, noting how rare it was for a newcomer to convey such menace with so little dialogue. He followed that performance with appearances in Poetic Justice alongside Tupac Shakur and Janet Jackson, hinting at a promising future as a gripping character actor. But off-screen, Avery's life began to blur disturbingly with the violent worlds he portrayed. Immersed in the same street environments that shaped the stories he acted in, he drifted toward real-life gang involvement. His focus shifted, auditions faded, and by the mid-1990s, Hollywood had lost him. Then came the breaking point. In 1999, Avery participated in a drug-related double homicide, a shocking act that stunned those who had admired his early potential. He was arrested, convicted in 2000, and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Even incarceration did not bring stability. In 2005, while housed at the notorious Pelican Bay State Prison, Avery was murdered by his cellmate, Kevin Roby, under circumstances as grim as any crime drama. Strangled in his cell, he He became a tragic embodiment of the very violence he had once only portrayed. Lloyd Avery II didn't simply disappear from Hollywood. He was consumed by the same darkness that had once fueled his performances. His life forms a haunting mirror between art and reality, a reminder of how fragile the line can be. The promise he once showed lingers in memory, overshadowed but not forgotten, a brilliant talent lost to a devastating fate. 16. Clifton Powell Jr. Clifton Powell Jr., son of acclaimed character actor Clifton Powell Sr., entered Hollywood with a familiar last name and a set of expectations most young performers never face. In the early 2000s, he landed a few small film roles and television guest spots, showing flashes of the same natural charisma that made his father a staple on screen. But behind the scenes, it became clear that acting wasn't his calling. Rather than chase auditions or live in the shadow of his father's legacy, Powell Jr. made a bold, unexpected pivot. He stepped away from Hollywood entirely and redirected his focus toward college basketball, embracing the discipline, competitiveness, and identity that athletics offered. For a time, it looked like sports would be his new path. Then he reinvented himself again, this time in the tech world. Diving into startups, digital innovation, and entrepreneurship, Powell Jr. cultivated a career far removed from entertainment. His social media painted the picture of a driven but private individual, someone more invested in building something of his own than revisiting his brief acting past. Those who worked with him remembered a young man unusually self-aware, someone who understood early that fame can be both gift and burden. He chose to bow out before the spotlight could define him. Unlike many children of Hollywood, Powell Jr. avoided interviews, avoided promotional events, and avoided trading on his father's reputation. There was no scandal, no meltdown, no dramatic departure, just a quiet, intentional decision to choose a life beyond Hollywood's demands. Today, Clifton Powell Jr. lives largely outside the media's gaze. His story isn't about disappearing, it's about redefining ambition. He inherited an industry, but chose independence, carving a path in basketball and technology that reflects who he is, not who Hollywood expected him to be. Ein Sieben, Punkt IV. Yvonne Hudson. Yvonne Hudson entered one of television's most chaotic battlegrounds when she joined Saturday Night Live during its notoriously troubled 1980-1981 season, a period often remembered as the show's lowest point. Amid revolving writers, plummeting ratings, and NBC's looming threat of cancellation, Hudson stood out quietly but significantly. As one of the first black women on the cast, she appeared alongside a young Eddie Murphy, contributing to sketches during a time when laughter itself felt uncertain. While many castmates from that disastrous season were swiftly replaced, Hudson remained on the show until 1984, weathering the instability that defined those years. Yet despite surviving SNL's toughest era, she never used the platform to launch a larger career. There were no sitcom roles, no film appearances, no comedy tours. When she left the show, she stepped away from entertainment altogether. What followed was silence, total, unwavering silence. Unlike fellow alumni such as Eddie Murphy or Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Hudson left behind no interviews, no memoirs, no stand-up sets, no convention appearances. Most documentaries and retrospectives on SNL barely acknowledge her existence. Writers and producers from that era seldom mention her. Beyond a handful of sketches preserved in reruns, almost nothing is known about her life after 1984. Hudson's vanishing acts as a haunting counterpoint to SNL's star-making legacy. She didn't disappear because of scandal, illness, or controversy. She disappeared through choice or perhaps circumstance, leaving a blank page where her story should continue. Today, Yvonne Hudson stands as one of SNL's deepest enigmas, a groundbreaking black performer who helped carry the show through its darkest chapter, yet whose fate beyond those studio walls remains unknown. Her story forces us to confront hard questions about representation, recognition, and who gets remembered in the long memory of pop culture. Orlando Jones burst into public consciousness in the early 2000s as the hilariously unfiltered face of 7-Up, launching the unforgettable catchphrase, "Make 7-Up yours." His explosive physical humor and razor-sharp timing made him a standout in one of the era's most iconic ad campaigns. From there, Jones seamlessly transitioned into television, becoming a breakout performer on Mad TV. His original characters, uncanny impressions, and unmistakable comedic energy proved he was far more than a pitchman. He was a true multi-talent. Film roles soon followed, including Evolution 2001 and Drumline 2002, signaling that Jones was poised for long-term success on the big screen. But after 2005, something shifted. His once constant presence on late-night shows, red carpets, and studio films quietly faded. Instead of chasing mainstream visibility, he turned toward independent projects, voiceover gigs, and selective appearances far from the Hollywood spotlight. There was no meltdown, no industry feud, no dramatic interview, just a deliberate slowing of momentum. Those who worked with Jones say the retreat was intentional. He was tired of being boxed into roles, the frantic comic relief, the commercial jester, the sketch show stereotype. Representation gaps in the industry only sharpened his desire to redefine himself outside the narrow lanes Hollywood offered. Rather than wrestle with a system that limited him, Jones simply stepped sideways. Today he resurfaces occasionally in cult projects, conventions, and speaking engagements, but on his own terms. His absence from mainstream media isn't a disappearance, it's a recalibration, a conscious choice to value authenticity over endless exposure. Orlando Jones didn't fade out. He redirected his path, leaving fans curious about what bold reinvention he might unveil next. 19. Brandon Hammond. In the 1990s, Brandon Hammond was everywhere, a young actor whose soulful eyes and emotional honesty made him unforgettable. In Soul Food 1997, he played Ahmad, the wise beyond his years narrator who tried to hold his family together. His performance didn't just support the film, it shaped its entire emotional core. He shined in Waiting to Exhale, held his own alongside Wesley Snipes in The Fan, and even stole scenes in Space Jam. Hammond had a maturity and depth rare in child performers, making him one of the most beloved young black actors of the decade. And then, just as quickly as he rose, he disappeared. There was no scandal, no tragic downfall, no public struggle. As the early 2000s arrived, Brandon Hammond simply stopped appearing on screen. The roles didn't dry up, he stepped back. There were no farewell interviews or dramatic explanations. Fans wondered, did he choose school over fame? Was he writing? Directing? Some whispered that he'd moved behind the camera, but Hammond himself offered little clarity. He never chased celebrity again. No nostalgia circuit, no sudden comeback, no viral social media presence, just quiet. What makes his story so rare is its calmness. In an industry where child stars often crumble under pressure, Brandon Hammond chose something different: peace. He left before Hollywood could reshape him, preserving the warmth and innocence audiences fell in love with. Today he remains a dignified mystery, remembered not for controversy but for the grace of his exit. Brandon Hammond didn't vanish in chaos, he vanished in choice, and that decision, quietly powerful, makes his legacy shine even brighter. And that brings us to the end of today's deep dive into the stars Hollywood left in the shadows. In a world obsessed with fame, their quiet disappearances remind us that every legacy deserves to be remembered, not buried. Were these actors forgotten, or did they choose peace over pressure? The truth is complex, and your voice matters in keeping their stories alive. So tell us in the comments, do you see walking away as empowerment or a silent tragedy? If this video opened your eyes, hit that like button, subscribe to Gazeon, and turn on notifications. More untold stories, hidden legacies, and powerful truths are coming next. Don't miss the journey ahead.